You're listening to Cross Rhythms Plymouth 96.3 FM, and it's another episode of Lifelines. I'll be honest with you, one of my favourite shows I get to do, chatting with someone about their life, about their faith, about kind of what Jesus means to them and how that's kind of come about in their lives. And I've got a real privilege of being joined in the studio by Joe Taylor. Joe is, amongst other things, involved in the life of the church at North Plymouth Community Church, the worship centre up there. Hi, Joe.
Hi.
It's great to have you here.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Yeah, you've not been in the studio before.
No.
Fair to say you've not done many things like this before, have you? So you're chatting a bit, a little bit nervous about sharing this, which is totally understandable. Yeah. But we really appreciate you being here and sharing a bit about your story. So before we go into your story and your background and those kind of things, just introduce yourself. What does life look like for Joe in 2025?
I'm married to assistant pastor at North Plymouth Community Church, where we fellowship, and we've got a 12-year-old daughter called Rosie, who's just started secondary school. I work in a primary school in Plymouth, helping with speech and language, with children who struggle, come across the city to our school to have help with speech and language. Which I absolutely love. And is that something you've been involved in like for a long time? Yeah, so I started at the school when Rosie started in foundation, so she's never not had me at school until poor girl. So this year at secondary is the first time she's been at school without me there. So.
Nice. That must be an interesting dynamic. It's probably a conversation for off air and another time. It's like what it's like working in a school where your kids are. But obviously you've said you're married to one of the pastors at the church at North Plymouth. Right. So obviously faith for you is obviously huge for you personally, but it's part of your family life in terms of your husband's role as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
But you haven't always been a Christian. It's not something you grew up with. Tell us a little bit about your upbringing. Were you born and raised here in Plymouth? What was life like for you growing up?
Yeah, so I grew up in Totnes, which is about half an hour away. Always grew up there, always lived there. My family have always been from there. My dad had always lived there. Yeah. Lovely family, really supportive, loving family. My sister, who's 2 years older than me. So went to local Totnes primary school. Didn't go to church. We just did like the normal church things like at Christmas and at Easter, harvest festivals, those sorts of things. And never really considered faith particularly growing up. Had a really happy childhood, sort of had what we needed, and parents were kind and generous and part of a community of a lot of friends that we grew up with. Had a really, really lovely childhood. And just hadn't really sort of ever considered faith really until sort of like my sort of late teens, 20s really. So so I mean, a beautiful part of the world to grow up. Yes. Totnes, a lovely part of the southwest here, and as you say, not a million miles away. So kind of faith was just like it is for many people in this country and in Europe as well, sort of a cultural thing whereby you'd go, as you say, for Christmas, the kind of traditional sort of festivals and that kind of thing, but no deeper than that. No kind of faith in family relations and stuff like that. Don't really remember having any sort of conversations particularly about God or about faith. Probably didn't really think it sort of applied to me. Thought, when I went to church, didn't think, oh no, I don't believe it. Just thought, there probably is something, but never really got any further than that of asking any further questions or thinking about it any more. It felt a bit too big, probably.
But also, from what you said off air, like I guess a little bit sort of irrelevant and not needed. Like you had so much of what you needed. It sounded like your childhood in many ways was quite idyllic. So it's like, well, I don't need to add this onto my life.
That's how it felt, definitely. There was nothing sort of that tragic that sort of happened or anything like that, which I probably sort of felt that may have driven people to what I thought was religion, to God, or didn't have anything like that. So probably didn't really see that need.
Well, that's, I mean, it's a really interesting place to pause. We're going to stop for some music and pick up the conversation, because obviously you're sat here saying you're now involved in the life of a church, married to one of the pastors of the church. So obviously something's changed from those statements.
Happen?
Yeah, exactly. What's the middle bit? We're going to get into that middle bit right after this. You're listening to Lifelines here on Cross Rhythms Plymouth 96.3 FM, in conversation with one of the team at North Plymouth Community Church, Joe Taylor. And it's been really interesting chatting with you in that first section, Joe, that you're now involved in a church. Faith for you is huge, is everything in your life. And yet when you were a child, it really wasn't, not because you were against it, but just because you're like, well, it just doesn't seem relevant to me and to my life. So talk me through then your kind of teenage years and stuff that, teenagers go through. What was teenage years like for you in schooling and all that kind of stuff? Did you get on well at school? What was that part of your life like?
Yeah, so I loved school really. Got on quite well at school and did RE for GCSE, and then went on to do it for A-level. So when looking back, I can see that I was actually starting to get a little bit interested in religion, and actually thinking about it before we came to the interview. I remember dragging my mum when we went up to London for the weekend as a family, dragging her to a Buddhist temple and a mosque. I was desperate to sort of like look around, and like I remember like knocking on the door and just the guy sort of showing us around inside, and it was fascinating. Yeah, and I can remember my mum sort of like coming with me. And we just had a look. So which is probably not a usual thing for a teenager to do. So I guess that wasn't interested in God. So I guess that was probably where my sort of interest sort of started, and started to look at why and what's this all about, sort of thing. So went on to do RE for A-level, and then carried on then to go to university, and I did RE in maths at uni.
That's quite an interesting combo.
That's what a lot of people said. Like, what are you going to do? You're going to be a vicar, like a vicar that does the accounts.
Chaplain for like an investment bank or something.
Yeah. So anyway, that lasted 6 weeks. So
interesting.
So I didn't get very far in that. So I just suddenly thought, what am I going to do with that? I think people were sort of saying, what are you going to do? But I think because I did well in school, my natural thing was to go to university, because I sort of thought you sort of need to.
Sure.
But once I got there, I thought, what am I actually doing with my life? Where am I? So in the end, I gave that up, and then came back and did my accountancy qualification at a firm in Newton Abbot. And then during that time, and from my late teenage years, really, so all through that time, I did what a lot of teenagers probably are doing, and lots of drinking and going out. Had a good sort of friendship group, but I can remember, a lot of alcohol really, and it wouldn't have been a normal weekend unless I'd sort of gone out and gone out drinking. And I can remember having done so this was like a gradual thing really, that it started off just something that everybody does, and then it suddenly sort of became a bit of a cycle. I can remember like going to work, and then Monday to Friday, just like 9 to 5, and then getting to the weekend, we go out Friday night, we go out Saturday night, and then that feeling on Sunday of, it's work again this week, and thinking, and I just remember thinking, is this all there is? Is this what is this it now for the rest of my life? Because I sort of stopped the uni thing, and that part of uni was going to be like, go away, have a great time and enjoy yourself and all of that. And I'd stopped that, and I got into work, and I was surrounded by all these people that are just working to pay their mortgage, just thinking, is this it now until I'm sort of 70? Sure. And then you try to make as much money as you can, have a good retirement, and then that's it. But I just remember thinking, there's got to be sort of more to life. But
that's really interesting. Sorry to interrupt. I'm just thinking like that's a really interesting, lots of people think that, I'm sure, but it's really interesting you said that almost as a teenager, you somewhere in you, whether you were aware of it or not, you were kind of really interested in the bigger questions. The fact that, as you say, on a trip to London, you wanted to go into a mosque, you wanted to go into a Buddhist temple, you wanted to like look at things a little bit deeper maybe than some kids might, because a lot of people are quite happy with that party, get up, go to work. They don't really think much deeper than that. But obviously for you, you're like, hang on.
Sort of going alongside that. At that same time, there was definitely something else, that drawing in to do it for a university like qualification as well, to start doing it for that. It was something obviously that I really, wanted to sort of get to grips with, I guess.
Yeah.
So then out of this, then I thought, I need to change what I'm doing. That'll fix it. That'll fix this feeling of, is this it? So then I stopped with the accountancy. I'd got the qualification, but then I decided to be a children's holiday rep.
Right.
So I did that for 2 years in mainland Spain and in Mallorca. And during this time, I can remember starting with feelings of depression and with the onset of bulimia. This was all sort of started to creep in through, I think, from these feelings of, is this it? And I couldn't really understand the depression, because I thought, well, what have I got to be depressed about? Well, there's nothing that's happened in my life that's bad or anything like that.
Sure.
I just don't really know where I'm going. I think that must have been like the beginnings of it. So from the depression, this control to this thing about controlling what I eat, sort of all came as part of that. So I went away and did this time as a holiday rep, and when I came back again from that was it. I'd done that. What's next? I just sort of remember sort of feeling like quite low, really, and ended up on antidepressants for a short term. I knew I didn't want to be on them for long.
Sure.
And had some counselling, which did help, but I guess didn't deal with the root of the issue.
Sure. Well, that's a really good place to stop for some music, and we'll pick up the conversation with Joe right after this. You're listening to Cross Rhythms Plymouth, 96.3 FM and on DAB as well. And you're listening to Lifelines in conversation with Joe Taylor, third part of our interview here. So if you are just tuning in, you'll be able to listen again on our YouTube channel and on our website, crossrhythms.co.uk/Plymouth. So check us out on there. And Joe, it's been really good to chat with you. We kind of moved along through your life in terms of growing up in a great home, pretty idyllic childhood in Totnes, lots to enjoy, and no connection to faith really, in terms of your family not having faith of any description really. No. But a sort of interesting latent interest in religious studies and religion through your teenage years, and then a kind of, as you described it there, going into adult life and thinking, is this all it is? Having a reasonably good job, training as an accountant, but then just like living for the weekend kind of stuff. Then thinking, well, if I change jobs, go and do something totally different. A holiday rep in a nice country. But you kind of left that still feeling depressed, and so tell us a little bit about where you were at, kind of as a person. Then were you really deep in the depression? How bad did it get for you at those years, in those stages? I wouldn't say I was really. I knew when I started taking the antidepressant, then I went to the doctor and started taking those. I knew I didn't want to be on. I didn't want to rely on them. I felt sort of quite measured in that, that I just want. If I just need that for a short time, but can we talk about coming off them even when I was going on them? So I didn't feel like I wanted to just stay on that, and I need that. The doctor was saying you probably do at this point, just to lift so you can see things in a slightly different way, which did help at that point. With counselling. And obviously, like, mental health is wide and varied for lots of different people, affects people in different ways for different reasons. For you, was it some of those things you've described of thinking like, what is life about? Was it those deeper questions of like, is this all there is? Was that what was driving it to some extent? Looking back, I'm not sure I knew it was that at that time. Sure. Because I think you always feel like you've got to put it on something sort of more concrete, sort of, that's happening. I mean, I did always have with body image and weight and things like that. I was always sort of quite up and down in my weight and things like that. So I do. I think that was definitely part of it. Yeah, absolutely. That the body image thing, which you see so much more now. Like, my heart just
goes out to teenage girls and boys. It's for boys as well. With the body image and what we should all look like, and that pressure. Definitely felt that pressure. So I think that was definitely one trigger. But underlying it all was, what is everything about, really? Definitely.
And kind of what's the point of everything?
Yeah.
Really? So tell us how things progressed for you. What happened next?
So when I came back from that job, I then started working at the council in Totnes, and my husband was working there at the same time. So I was in the accounts department and he was in the print room, and I did the accounts for the print room.
There you go.
So and we knew each other for a while, but I ended up working there for probably 10 years, something like that. But we didn't end up really getting together until about 5 years in. Little did I know, I was in a longer term relationship at that point, and my husband was as well, or we'd both come out of those. So neither of us were in a place for a relationship anyway. And I just didn't see him like that. He always laughs because I sort of said, I just didn't see you like that at all. He'll be listening to this like rolling his eyes. But,
thanks.
But I do remember, and it sounds ridiculous now, like walking down the corridor and him walking the other way in work one day, and suddenly there was just like a moment, and it was like a light came on. It was really weird, and I just suddenly thought, oh, actually, it's quite nice. But I hadn't thought that before, and looking back, I wasn't in that place. If we'd have got together before that time, neither of us were in a place when we could have sort of had any like proper relationship, really, because we just weren't in that right place, either of us at that moment. So but I just remember that moment, which sounds crazy and like a film, not like romanticizing it at all. But it was just that I just remember that moment when it changed from just like, oh yeah, it's just Dan, to like, actually,
hang on. That's fun. I like that.
So and then we went out on a date, and
did he, like, I don't want to be prying, it sounds like gossip at this point, but like, did he ask you, like, did he have what was his side of the story? Did he like you longer, or like did he ask you out?
Apparently he did.
Right. That's the story.
I don't know. And then the people around us, that awkward thing when people around sort of know, and then they were trying to get us in together, and then there was a few of us going out for lunch one day, and then I got in the car and he was already in the back of the car, but nobody had told me he was there, and it was that awkward. It was a bit of a setup. So sort of from that we did then. I think he asked me, and we went out for a meal. So So, and if anyone knows my husband, he can talk. So the waiter had to come around and say, the kitchen's about to close if you'd like to order any food.
No way.
That's amazing. But I think it was both of us.
I was going to say, at least you had stuff to talk about, rather than no chemistry whatsoever.
And obviously from his side, obviously he had grown up in a Christian home, and for him, faith was obviously his life. So he was looking for a time to say to me about everything, didn't quite know how to broach the subject. And then he had like something on his key ring, I think it was I think it was a fish, and I sort of said, oh, what's that mean on your key ring? And that was like then he sort of explained that he's a Christian and committed to church, and family, committed to the church and everything, and I remember even then sort of going, oh well, that's nice, that's nice, that's fine. I mean, if we ever get together, you can go in on a Sunday and I'll
do my own thing,
and I'll see you later. That's absolutely fine. So so didn't get what it actually meant, because again, growing up, you just thought Christianity or religion was go into a church every so often, not anything more than that, sort of in the week even, just that it didn't really affect your life. It's more about somewhere that you go.
It's just a thing that you do on a Sunday morning. Interesting. Really interesting. Well, let's stop for some more music again, and pick up the conversation with Joe right after this. You're listening to Cross Rhythms Plymouth 96.3 FM. In the studio with Joe Taylor, it's Lifelines, and we're kind of good chunk of the way through your interview, but not that far through your life. So we'll get a bit further forward. So you talked about in the last section, sort of meeting your now husband, finding out somewhere through the dating process that he was a Christian, that was really important to him. And you certainly weren't against it, but you were like, well, you can do that. I'll do my own thing.
Yeah.
How did that progress? Tell us about where you were then.
So, he sort of invited me to church, and I started going along just to see what it was all about, really. And I just remember going in and just sitting and watching the praise and worship and just looking and thinking, God, these people seem to have really got something. I didn't know what it was, but just thought they really believe what they've got. Like, this isn't something that they're just going to just do, to just sit, listen, go home. They're actually participating. There's something happening when they're praising and worshiping. There's like a connect. You could see a connection. And I just thought, that was amazing, really. I love singing anyway. I've always loved singing, and mainly like Belinda Carlisle. You probably don't remember Belinda Carlisle, Kylie Minogue.
Yeah.
First time around. But I always remember like singing at the top of my voice. I love music and love like singing anyway. But there was something different when it came to watching people worship. I thought, there's really something there. So it just made me want to go. I just loved going. There was something that was just drawing me back each time.
So presumably you started going because of Dan.
Yeah.
And then, and I guess because of what you've said earlier in your interview, having an interest in religions, people who are seeking something more, and also in your own experience thinking there must be more than this through a sort of sense of what else there is. So I suppose that itch was starting to get scratched as well as just going for your partner sort of thing. So so you got more of an interest. Tell us what happened. What happened next?
So and that's the interesting, like you said, going for your partner, because as I started going more, I loved it, but at the same time felt that challenge each time of like, because they would sort of our pastor, still pastor now, Pastor Rob would say, if anyone wants to make that decision to become a Christian, and I'd be thinking, I think I should, but I don't want to do it for the wrong reasons. I don't want to do it because I want to be with Dan, because I was increasingly knowing that his life was a church, and I realised now that if I didn't become a Christian, I don't know how that would have looked, how that would have happened. So I knew how important it was to not make that decision for that relationship. I knew I had to. I didn't realize the enormity of the decision at the time, but I knew I couldn't. I knew it was big enough that I couldn't make it for the wrong reasons. I had to make it for me. I knew it was about me and God, and not anything to do with anybody else.
And so, more than even just, you said you felt like maybe you should. Like, should is an interesting word, isn't it? Like, you don't want to do it just because you feel you should, because that's very impersonal, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. So I knew that it was a real decision, and I knew that real decision could only be for me, whatever my life looked like after that, not to do it for any other reason.
Sure.
So I took probably longer than a lot of people, and every time they appealed for anyone that wanted to be a Christian, I remember sort of looking around to see if there was anyone else, not knowing I was the only one in that church at that point that had.
Really?
That wasn't,
so Dan was like, anytime.
So probably went on for sort of 4 or 5, 6 months maybe, and I kept going, but then got to the point where it turned from enjoying it to thinking, oh no, I know I'm gonna have that challenge again. I'm gonna have that challenge again. And then probably after about 6 months of going, I thought, I'm not doing it in church. I'm going to do it on my own in my bedroom.
Nice.
And I made the decision just prayed that one night on my own at home. And was a Christian, saved.
Yeah.
And then I remember that Pastor Rob asking, we went over there for dinner, and he sort of said, like, I think it was that same week, and he said, how are you feeling about things like about God and about Jesus, and how about you feeling about church? And I went, oh, well, I made the decision last night and like said the prayer. And he was like, did you? And I was like, yeah. And he was like, oh my goodness, that's amazing.
That's so cool.
But yeah, so in the end, it was a real personal, it was my time, like God's time, I guess. But I knew it had to be that decision for me.
Awesome. Well, we'll stop for some more music now and pick up the conversation with Joe after this. You're listening to Lifelines here on Cross Rhythms Plymouth in conversation with Joe Taylor. You've missed most of the interview if you've just tuned in, but don't worry because you can watch it on YouTube, Cross Rhythms Plymouth, search us on there, or go to crossrhythms.co.uk/Plymouth. Listen again and you'll be able to listen to it there. So Joe, you described your kind of coming to faith and what that looked like for you. In the sense of being in church a lot as someone who wasn't a Christian, going for your partner who was a Christian. And you described how, like, I love how you decided to sort of reach out to God in your own personal time, in your bedroom, not in a church setting where there was lots of opportunity again and again, week after week and stuff. And presumably there were conferences you could have gone to and all that kind of stuff. But what changed for you then to go, actually, do you know what? I want God for myself. Because you said in that last section, you definitely didn't want to do it out of like, I should do this or do it for your partner or do it for anyone else. You really wanted it to be personal. So why did it become a moment where you're like, okay, now's the time? Yeah,
I think over those months of going and listening to the word and being in that atmosphere of worship, it was like a gradual thing, really. It wasn't sudden. It was a gradual drawing, I guess, of from God and a gradual realization of the questions that I'd had of, is this all that there is? Because suddenly you sort of think, oh my goodness, there is more. And I knew I was gradually realizing it was real and it can be real for me. What these people around me had was real. And I could sense that. I could feel that there was more to everything. And it just, the jigsaw pieces almost sort of came together, and it was just like oh my goodness, like there is more. And it's life. I realized it was what I was doing was existing and doing the thing, doing life, but not actually having life in me. I could feel that drawing and that excitement again for like a hope and a future, which is what God offers us, you know, that there is more than just going for a job or just having enough money or having a child or getting married, or it's more to these things. It's just all these things that we look on as life. I suddenly realized it's like, and it makes sense after, he's like the author of life. So it's actual life is who he is and what he can give us, not what we do almost. And it was just a massive revelation, really, that just changes everything. Everything.
That's a beautiful way to describe it. And I guess for you, as you say, you gradually like warming up to that idea, like I guess gradually seeing more that invitation is something you want to receive for yourself, and why not you in that sense? After a while you kind of like, actually, you know what, I really want that for myself. And I saw it wasn't about religion as well, because I'd looked at religion, I'd looked at temples and mosques and even, you know, beautiful churches, so and I just realized it's not about that. It's not about the even going on a Sunday. It's about a personal relationship, and that's what I knew I needed, that connection. That's great. So what happened next then? Like, so obviously that's a big decision from where you were, like not having any other family in terms of your, family you were born and raised in, who were Christians and stuff. So it wasn't like you had loads of people around you that you knew what that looked like. No. What happened next for you then? So again, it was gradual. The depression, I just know that lifted off gradually. Eating disorder, it was just amazing. I was able to like choose what to eat. I didn't feel driven with anything anymore of having to control food. Food for me was like really high in my mind all the time, and what I was going to eat, what I wasn't going to eat, how I was going to control it. And I remember that being a massive thing. Just wasn't there anymore. Just when you just, and it's a gradual thing. Like I can remember just suddenly thinking,
not thinking that anymore. It's just amazing. And then I even remember stopping swearing, because swearing was just a normal part, like it is for many people, a normal part of like my language. And I remember not wanting to swear, which I thought, that's a rant. I didn't even think about the swearing thing. So it's not even like I tried to not swear. It wasn't like I thought, I'm not allowed to swear anymore, so I'm not going to swear. It just naturally happened. Then I remember stubbing my toe about 4 weeks after I like made the decision. And that, if there's a time you're going to swear,
that's so funny.
That is the time.
I had this conversation with someone the other week. That's so random. But I had the exact same point. Yeah.
And I remember thinking more about the fact that I hadn't sworn than about how sore my toe was. Because if that's not something you're thinking about, is it? That is just an instant reaction that you are just going to swear if that happens. And I can remember actually not being able to say it, like even almost going to say it and it not physically being able to come out my mouth. And I just thought, it's just amazing.
That's a really interesting, because in and of itself, it's kind of like people might be listening saying, well, that's a small thing, but it's a sign, as you say, to you of like, it is really interesting and kind of clear difference of the difference between like a faith that you're living and breathing and that change that the Bible says of like changing our hearts, like God giving you a new heart, and just a whole phrase, a very Christian phrase of being born again. Like you're suddenly, you come alive in an area of yourself that you weren't before, as compared to like religion, whereby it's just about rules. And because like you say, it wasn't someone, Rob and Wendy, the leaders of the church, didn't come to you and say, you cannot swear now. There was no edict that like, you can't do these things and that thing and whatever else. Or like, okay, you have to not think about food the way you were. Like suddenly your heart was changed, and so you were changed, and so therefore things changed for you in a very natural way, which is really beautiful. And that's
like evidence to you of that decision, that me personally, of that decision I made. That nobody else would probably understand that, but I knew that was because it was from the inside out. So like you say, it's not people saying from the outside, you can't do this, you can't do that. That's religion, and that's what I didn't want any part of. But it's the evidence that something's happened inside that then affects what you do on the outside, which is just it just blew my mind. Which something like you say, just so others it might be really small, but to me I knew the reality of that through a silly thing like stubbing my toe.
Love it Right, well, we'll stop for some more music, pick up the final section. These always go too fast. It's the final section of our Lifelines interview after this. You're listening to Cross Rhythms Plymouth 96.3 FM, and it's the final part of Lifelines here. And so with it being the final part, check it out on Listen Again on our website, on YouTube as well, here in conversation with Joe Taylor. And Joe, you've talked about really in that last section, you're kind of coming to faith, and through a number of different things, including not swearing and even when you stub your toe, that like something inside you had changed, like that was a really interesting like external sign of that. But a more, I suppose, profound sign was, and you alluded to it in the last section, that like you had depression, you had bulimia, those things lifted off over time. Now, obviously, people listening to this, there will be Christians listening to this, still wrestling with depression, anxiety. It's a very complex journey, and it's nuanced for every single person. But for you, it did lift, and you came free of it, and God did something for you that was really profound. And it's really interesting, because I guess you weren't doing it for that reason, in the sense you didn't become a Christian just to see your depression go, like from how you've described it. But it was a byproduct that something changed in you. Do you want to describe that aspect of your journey a bit more?
I guess I realised again gradually that it just felt like that heaviness had sort of been lifted off, really. And I just felt like I'd received life. So whatever was there that wasn't of life at that point had lifted off. And I just believe God like did that to show me like the result of that decision, that he can do anything in our lives. And like you say, there probably are some Christians, and I know there are Christians suffering mental health stuff and depression. And I think because of going through that, I've got a real heart for those people as well. I think like whatever you go through, like there's always going to be ups and there's always going to be downs in life, and just because you make that decision for Jesus doesn't mean your life's going to be perfect. Like no way. because like in our life, in our marriage and in our family, there's been times of like ups and downs, definitely. But it completely changes how you deal with life, really. It just changes your whole decision-making process. There's just so much more light there, and hope in every situation, whatever you go through.
It's beautiful, isn't it, in the sense that it almost gives you a bigger context for life to sit in. So like if you don't have a faith, and you can speak to this better from your perspective before you were a Christian, like life in terms of like your job and all those things that we have in like, they're everything. If they're everything, then everything's really like mission critical almost. And so therefore, you know, people do struggle mentally. For you, you said you kind of had to control food because of comparison with how other people look. So like all of those things matter almost way more than they're meant to, and yet don't satisfy. Whereas if you've got a bigger context, you know, God's with you in everything. You know he's with you by experience, and then you've got that hope of beyond this life being with God forever. Then suddenly like you can have that peace, you can have that joy, can't you? You can have those feelings of like, oh, I can breathe a bit more in that sense. Would that be fair in your experience?
Absolutely. Like when you realize God's in control ultimately, and he's got your life in his hands and your family and everyone around you, then you don't need to be having to control everything to that nth degree, because you know, we still play our part, we do our job, we are kind to people, you do things, you help out, but you're not trying to control your life. And then it gives you that chance to sort of look out for others then as well, because I think so often for me, like with my mental health, you end up going in on yourself, you end up looking at this and that and that. But with God, he enables you to then look out to others, because he says he's looking after us, he's looking after me, and I know that. And that helps me then be able to look out for others who've gone through the same thing, and that's why you have a heart for things. And I think that's why God allows these things often, that you can actually support other people who haven't got Jesus as well, like how people do it without Jesus. So it's, you know, I just my heart goes out to them.
And as you say, then as you've got a story to share, which is what this interview's all been about. We've basically run out of time. I feel like we could talk about lots of other things and go off on that into different areas, but it's beautiful how, you know, you can then really empathize, really walk in the shoes of people who've had mental health struggles and bring something to them.
And I think that's what the church is there for. That's who we should be as a church, is as a place where hurting people can come. I think so often I've spoken to people who feel like, oh, I'm not good enough to come to church, and you think that just makes me so sad, because I think, you know, I heard somebody once say we should be a hospital for the broken, not a museum for the perfect person. Because we're certainly not, none of us are perfect. And we just want to be there for other people that are hurting.
Beautiful. And so Joe, you are part of the team up at North Plymouth Community Church, the worship centre up in Estover. So if you're listening to this and kind of want to check out a church that Joe's talking about, that is the church he's part of. Joe, thank you so much for your time, and wish you all the best.
Thank you.